Hello everybody, welcome to South Olympic Branch update number 80. Here we have Paulson number 70 pulling a Mount Rainier holiday timber train back from the depot as they get ready to shut things down for the evening. It's 5 o'clock in LB, Washington, and the sun has already set, and it's about 37 degrees. Nice and cold, but it was a beautiful ride nonetheless. And there's Mount Rainier right out through the vestibule as we rolled along down the tracks. Back at home, my friend Herb came by, brought a couple of his Athearn GP35s with him, and we ran those. I was looking at the upper deck structure and thinking about how I'm going to bridge that. And then I decided to review my structure under here. And, until a few minutes ago, there was a second piece of 3/4 inch that was going across on this side. And now I looked at it and I realized it wasn't supporting anything. The joist above it was just floating. So I thought, why do I even have that there? So I took it out and I'll reuse it. But I'm kind of thinking I'm going to cut it down to maybe 2 inches wide so that when it goes up there, it can make a thinner piece across. Because I think if I have two of those, it'll support it just fine without it taking up as much vertical room, which means that I'll have more room to take pictures of scenery or whatever. So, and not have it as obvious. And now I've hoisted those two pieces of plywood up there. And of course, lumber yards being what they are, I said, hey, rip it in half. And I think they immediately thought, oh yeah, it's 48 by 96, so we'll just rip it in half. Well, of course, I should have been more clear. I should have said, hey, let's measure that and find out exactly how wide it is, because it's probably, I know that one piece is 24. So, some pieces of plywood are actually like 49 inches wide or pretty close to it. And I think that's what this one was. So it's, this sheet that's closest to me is piece of the sheet is a little wider than I wanted it, which means I'll have to rip it myself. I was trying to avoid that. You guys might have kind of figured out, or maybe you didn't, that I sort of have a thing for grain cars, and especially really well detailed ones. And Midwest Model Railroad had a sale on grain cars, so I got some more grain cars. I didn't really need more grain cars, but I got some more grain cars. So anyway, some of these. What are these, you say? Well, these are a 4750 General American covered hopper. And there's some extra wheel caps for those wheels that you want to see, for the bearing caps you want to see spinning, but will probably more sooner than later go spinning off into La La Land. So I think they give you some extra ones because I know that's going to happen. Haven't had that happen yet, but I could see it coming. I could totally see it happening. Anyway, I'm not going to make you guys sit here and watch me unbox these cars. I'm just going to put some of them on the track and we'll take a quick look at them. And so the first two cars are the General American 4500 series. This one even says that it was a CB&Q that was delivered on January 1965, and this one was a ADM Blue that was delivered in September of 1966. And they also said that General American Tank Car, or General American, delivered up to 1,200 of those to different railroads. This is a PS2 4750 Pullman Standard. That was delivered in '79. So if I was running a 1971 train, it really wouldn't fit. But I had an inclination to get a couple more of these green and gold MKT cars. Missouri, Kansas, Texas. And we'll see what those look like on the track too. And a Frisco variant in the oh so boring gray paint scheme. Now, I've seen that Walthers has actually come out with some of these, some Frisco cars that are painted being green. And I might be tempted to get some of those at some point. Scratch that. I will be tempted to get some of those at some point. I mean, after all, it's me. So there's the Frisco car. But it'll be still be a nice variation for my fleet. Well, I got to tell you, these are nice looking cars, but sadly I had to kind of fix a couple of them out of the box. For example, these the MKTs, one of them came with this little end piece right here, bent down. And I had to bend that back up, and it came off when I did it. So I ended up gluing that back on. And then one of the couplers was like kind of bent, which was weird. Anyway, such a deal. They're still nice cars. At least it's stuff I could pretty easily fix. Years ago, I bought some undecorated AccuRail PS 4750 3-bay grain hoppers. And I was going to use them for a Burlington Northern project. But unfortunately, I found that when I was trying to apply the big BN logo, it would tear to the side of the car. That was really annoying. So I set those aside in frustration. But then I decided that I wanted my own custom Christmas cars. So here I'm spraying the car with the Vallejo Air Azul Claro, or Pale Blue, and that's number 71.008. And I've thinned this down with a couple of drops of thinner, and just going around the car. By the way, the custom paint stand I'm using here is just a couple of pieces of plywood screwed together, and I've got a thin flexible piece of foam that is holding the car in place while I turn it around and around. And I've sped the video up here. I'm really not moving anywhere near as fast as it shows, but you can probably tell that. I'm finally beginning to feel like I've got a good coat of paint on the main body of the car, and it's time to move on. So now I'm painting the underside of the model, making sure I get a good coat around there, even though in the center sill there's some additional kit parts that go there, so those are a separate piece. But there sure are a lot of angles, so you end up moving the airbrush here, there, and everywhere. Now I'm moving on to the sprue that has the slope sheets and the brake detail, as well as the outlet gates, and something else on there too. Oh, the bolsters. Yeah, It's also got some of the center sill panels and in parts as well. Lots of little parts on this sprue, and I'm making sure to get both sides of it, of course, and trying to flip the sprue at different angles, because you can try to guess, but you never really know what's going to be visible, I think, unless you've put together several of these, and I haven't done that many. Last but not least come the end frames. Once again, I'm flipping them around all kinds of different directions, and it's time to refill the paint. More of that pale blue, and then some thinner to go along with it, although I don't think I show that here. I'm not being too scientific about it. I'm probably putting about 3 or 4 drops of thinner in there in the cup, depending on how much paint I got. And then of course I'm, shooting the side of the plywood and adjusting. The Posh airbrush that I use is a very simple single action one, but it makes up for that single action by being able to turn the nozzle, and that adjusts some of the amount of paint that you get out of this thing. I actually like this brush quite a bit because I can set it to that one thing and then only adjust it when I really feel the need, rather than having to fiddle with the button. But hey, you know what? To each his own, as I've often said. My not so fancy booth here is actually the restroom in the train room, and I've just got a shelf that's sitting on top of the big utility sink I have in there. I've also got the fan running in there, and I'll just air out the room when I'm done, but in the meantime, this is giving me a place to paint when it's 40 degrees outside. Whoops, I lied. I thought I did the M frames last, but it turns out I didn't. Looks like it's the center sill pieces up next. And so when I get done with all this, I'll use some Plastrict glue to put it together. Although I did find that for the end frames at the very top, that the CA worked out well there, because it dries a little slower than the Plastrict does, which seems to dry almost immediately. I don't worry too much about getting paint where the glue is going to go. I can always just sand it off real quick if I need to. Doesn't seem to make much difference in a project like this, though. Got a couple of things of Christmas decals here that I'm going to apply to this car, or at least one. Maybe I'll just put some candy canes on there. But I do have, some snowmen and some Christmas trees. I could do that. Yeah, we'll see here. Okay. That's something I've never tried before. I was using a shaper to do this. This is like a clay shaper that somebody suggested for weathering. And I'm gonna at least get the decal out of the water with these tweezers. Put it on the car. That's upside down. That's even better. That'll upset some people. I'm just kidding. Okay, so now if I take my shaper and I try to glide, oh, yeah, that's not working. That is not working. Now that I've done the one decal, I think I'll put another one at the other end of the car. So there's the other one. You'll notice they're not in the same position, and that's okay. I don't intend them to be equidistant. Only got 3 of the letters on there so far. There's like, what, 12 more to go? And I'm thinking I should have gone with a bigger font when I printed these out, but I'll deal. And then this will be Christmas Train Car 1.0 anyway. Of course, I found out I was out of number 11 X-Acto blades, and I wanted to use a fresh one. It just so happens I had this Alpha cutter, which is really good for cutting like 005 styrene sheets. And so I decided to try using it for my decals, because I had to cut out each individual letter. And that works pretty good so far. Slowly but surely getting there. Going to pause here for a second and review what I'm doing. So I'm taking and cutting out my letters off my decals individually, and then I'm doing putting some micro set on the side of the car. Then I'm dipping the decal in my little cup of water here. Then I'm putting it on sliding it off onto the car, and I'm using a color shaper to kind of nudge it into place where I want it. Once I get it where I want it, I'm putting some more micro set on top of the decal, letting that set for a few seconds, and then using a Kleenex, one of the non-moisturized varieties, and just putting a little pressure on top of it, being careful not to wiggle my finger, maybe roll it back and forth to kind of press it into place. Here goes another letter. Okay, I've applied the decals to the other side. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm also pretty happy with the decals on the ends. I'll have to wait till tomorrow to dull coat over these things to seal them effectively, and then I can assemble this car and have it on the rails for my 2023 Christmas train. I'm pretty excited about that. I think this is going to be really cool. I decided to add a couple of trees to this side of the car. These are also from the microscale decal packs, the 87-1120 and 1119. Hoping to find a box car so I can put some of without ribs, I can put some of these bigger things on, because I am not getting anywhere trying to get things to wrap around the ribs on these things. Every time I do it, they tear. I guess I should probably email Microscale and see what they say. But anyway, these are ready for dull coat. That will seal the decals on the car, and off we go. By the way, and I don't think they really say this in the instructions, but they kind of imply it. Before I put a decal on the car, I put some of the micro set on there, and I'm doing it with this number 4 brush, right? And now let that sit for a minute or for a few seconds while the decal is in the water. And then I slide the decal off onto the car, and I use these tweezers. You don't have to have locking tweezers, these just happen to be that, to kind of hold the paper that the decal is on. And I started using these color shapers. This one happens to be an angle chisel, but I don't think you really need that specific one. And I find that works pretty good for kind of nudging the decal around on the car. So I think that's new. I've never heard of anybody doing that before, although I can't say I've watched a lot of decaling videos. But but it works well for me. It's something I'm going to do. Anyway, then after I get the decal on the car, as I drop my paintbrush, I find that I come back with that number 4 brush and I kind of go, horizontally against the car, and I kind of roll the brush back and forth, watching for any bubbling of the decal to be kind of worked out of that. And then I dab any additional water off, let that sit for a few seconds. Put some more of the micro set on top of the decal, and once again making sure I'm not ruffling it or anything. I'll let that sit for a few seconds. And then they say in the instructions to use a paper towel, but as I said before, I find a Kleenex does a pretty good job. And that indeed is working out well on this car. We'll see what happens when I actually put the dull coat on it. When I've, in the past, there have been a couple times when I went to spray a car with dull coat and the decals flew off when I did that. Yeah, well, that was one of those times, I think, when my wife might have heard me swearing. Anyway, so I just wanted to talk a minute about assembling the grain car. I put a lot of the small parts on here, including the center sill and the end pieces here. I've also kind of assembled the ends. Now I'm just going by the instructions that AccuRail includes in the box. So I don't think this thing is anything earth-shattering. And I've got some double stick tape here that I'm using to attach the weight to the bottom. And so I'm just working on the end pieces and seeing what it wants me to do. So you can see a little blob of glue right there, and there's one right there. I adjusted the end slope, the slope sheet, so that it would be in the best position I could for the end frames. But these pieces here, I discovered after I glued some things together, unfortunately, that I probably should have taken this end when it was on the sprue and maybe filed it down a little smoother. It doesn't seem to really affect the performance of the car, but that's what I did, or that's what would have been helpful. Also, as of it shouldn't be noted that, as I do with any of these cars that I put together, I took out the plastic wheels and I chucked them in the trash. And I got some Walther's Proto 33-inch wheels and put them in there. And then there's a KD 148 coupler there too. I'll put that in there. And so, all in all, I'm pretty happy with the way that this car came out. I maybe could have dull coated it a little bit more, or maybe used a little less of the shiny on the under, but when you're looking at it straight on, you really don't see that. It's only when you're looking at it directly in light, look at that shiny light like that. I think if you look at it on the side, on the track, you're not going to see that. And after all, this is, once again, a Christmas car. And it was really actually a great, I would encourage people to do stuff like this as kind of a practice project, just because I think you get some different experience with stuff you might not normally use on a car. And that gives you, that helps you out going forward when you do something that's more of where you're trying to replicate a prototype. So now that we've done all this work, let's put this baby on this Christmas train. And let's see if it rolls around the layout nicely behind an engine. Well, that'll be it for episode number 80. I really appreciate you guys joining me, and I hope you all have a fun and happy holiday. Man, wearing the paint mask really messes with my hair, but I know that you guys don't join me for my fashion skills. Anyway, until next time, this is Larry signing off.